Sandy Springs, Georgia looks like almost any other town in America, except for one key difference. The entire town is run by a private company. How does this work? And do the people like it?
People love it.
Oliver Porter was a leader in the creation of the new privately run city of 100,000 people.
The model that I created, which is very different, is using private industry to provide the services.
Services like administration, 911, the water department, permitting, parks and recreation, and more, all run by a private company. What's the difference when a private company runs a city? Well, let's take the case of a pothole. I'm driving along the road one day and I hit a pothole. What do I do?
If someone calls our city, they get a live person. They don't get all these menus, dial 1, dial 2. They get a live person. That person will either give them a response immediately to their problem, and then let's take the pothole. Found a pothole. Okay, that has to go to our road maintenance department. They will immediately transfer them there, but at the same time, they will actually issue a work order into the system that says fix pothole at 150 Haverson Waters, whatever.
So I call and complain about a pothole. I get how long does it take for me to be on hold?
It's almost instantaneous normally. You can require in the contract what level you want. You can say it's got to be answered within 2 rings. It's got to be answered within 5 rings. But in our case, it's answered very quickly. And here's something else. You have to get a response as to what is being done about that within 2 days. And if it's what we would call an emergency, not a 911 emergency, but an emergency such as, well, the lot across the street from me, somebody's out there cutting down the trees. They shouldn't be. 2 hours, you have to get a response for that. And that response doesn't necessarily say it's fixed, of course, but it tells you who's got it and what's being done about it and when it will be fixed.
Can I call at midnight?
Midnight, 24/7. You get a live person.
On Sunday?
Sunday, yep. That's the seventh day, or first day. Depending on you count up 24/7 year round.
Wow. So with so much responsiveness, I would think that the cost for the calling for the call center would go up.
Except that a lot of the bureaucratic processes, paperwork flowing here and there, and all waste time and all, it pays for that.
It saves money.
Saves money in the long run. But yes, it's it's an expense part of the city, but it saves money in the long run, and it really moves you up so many notches on the responsiveness scale.
I want to talk about other functions of the city. 911 emergency.
Yes.
The city takes care of that, or
the county had been the provider of that. Within about a year, we took that over, contracted it to a private company.
Wait a second. A private company running 911? That sounds
Absolutely
scary.
recommend that. Not only is it efficient from our standpoint, far less costly than the county, far better than the county, but we're actually been able to share it with other cities, which cut our cost by about 2/3.
What about people who say, well, if 911 were run by a company, then you would have a greedy company trying to make a profit by not responding, or by saying, well, they're not really in danger. Why should we go save them? What do you say to critics about this model?
It's free market. If they don't perform, they don't keep the contract. They're out. Unlike the county, which you couldn't get rid of. And I guess the horror story that I keep remembering about the county 911 was we had a death caused by a 911 operator's incompetence and inefficiency. That was 3 or 4 years ago. She's still on the payroll. Still haven't been able to get rid of her in the courts, even though she had a 12-year record of coming to work drunk, going to sleep at the board, falling off her seat, and then a death. That's the problem with bureaucracies. You can neither hire, fire, or discipline or reward. The motivation aspect of our employees is something that's hard to measure but easy to see.
The ability to give people raises and to fire them is critical
The
to
carrot and the stick is the free market. Yeah. Previous employees of other governments have come to me and said, I tried for years to tell people that I wasn't doing this, we weren't doing this job right, that there was a better way, and nobody cared. And basically, people give up. There's no reward for butting your head against a system that won't listen. They come into this system, and not only are they heard, the companies are begging them for ideas, because guess what? There's a profit motive in there. If they can do it more efficiently, find a better way to do it, they can make more money. And great, let them do that.
Okay, so courts, police, fire, all run by the city. But what about jails? Was that run by the corporation or the city, or how does that work?
Well, it's part of the public safety, so it was run by the city, but we didn't build any jails. We went out and rented jail space. Others, municipal governments had spare capacity, other counties. It's a good deal for both sides. They got money for their unused capacity, and we got a very good deal in terms of our cost. We didn't have to go into a capital program to build jails.
So you're renting space in other people's jails,
Yeah.
just like someone might rent an apartment or something.
Exactly.
You rent the
Exactly.
jail, and you
Yeah.
can utilize
And by the
it.
way, it's competitive. We might be with one jail system for a while and then go to another one because they said, we got some space and we'll give you a better rate.
The jails want you to rent from them.
Yeah, because they're sitting there with spare capacity.
Okay, so what about City Hall?
Well, we don't own the city hall or any administrative buildings. In the original contract, the companies were to provide space for that, and they did. And they got very good deals as a large company renting space that we couldn't get as a city. And they have provided us with excellent city hall and administrative buildings now for 9 years at a very low cost.
So you do have a City Hall.
We have a city hall, but we don't own it.
Oh,
The company provides the space, built it out, and equipped.
so a City Hall is just something as simple as as office space.
In effect, it is, yeah.
It's office space.
You don't
that,
need some glorified Taj Mahal of a public building for that. Get yourself something that is a good administrative space that a good company would use for administrative space, and it's very efficient.
I'm here at the City Hall of Sandy Springs, which is actually just a regular office building. Renting office space keeps the cost down, and you won't find any extravagant monuments here. But what you will find are private companies that manage everything from the parks to the sewage to the traffic to the permits. Let's take a look at some of the parks. I'm here at Abernathy Park, which is a private park in the city of Sandy Springs. Most of the equipment here looks like a work of art, and most of it was donated. You have nice parks here?
Very nice now. We did not before.
And more parks.
More parks, better parks.
So outsourcing has led to more and better parks.
Yeah,
in the city.
because the savings that you get from the efficiency in running operations can then be used for things like parks. It could be used to build up the police force.
You mentioned savings.
Yeah.
Does Sandy Springs have a surplus?
Sandy Springs does have a surplus. I started in the beginning saying the two measures were efficiency and responsiveness. Well, on the efficiency side, I told you we'd not raise taxes while increasing services, and right through the recession when others were having problems, built a $45 million reserve, and we have zero long-term debt and unfunded liabilities for pensions or health benefits. The things that are taking cities, counties into bankruptcy, we have none of that, and we don't intend to have any of that.
What do you do with that surplus then?
Well, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to totally redevelop the whole downtown area. That is going to take, that will probably take us into some debt, except, once again, I sincerely hope and trust, because of the people we've elected, that they will do this in a public-private partnership, just like we have done the services, and bring in a good deal of private development money into the process that will keep the city from going deeply in debt to rebuild its entire downtown.
Yeah, but let's say that you have a city that has a huge surplus, which cities are not used to having,
Right,
by the way, right?
right.
So that's amazing, first of all.
Right.
But shouldn't that money then go back to the taxpayer?
You have choices. You have a lot of choices. I would say, I think I've outlined like 6 or 7 in my book, and I didn't try to tell our elected officials how to make those choices, but here are the choices. Number one, you can lower taxes. Okay, they haven't done that because they're looking forward to this huge redevelopment project. For one, 2, you can provide more services with that money, and we have done exactly that. Okay, 3, you can avoid debt by using the reserve instead of debt, or if you had debt as an existing city, you could pay down on that debt. 4, you can, if you have unfunded liabilities for pensions and other things, you can pay that down, fund those with it. Gosh, there are a couple more, but they're all choices that
Things that the
should
city
be
can
made
do.
not by, and it's certain the company has nothing to do with those choices. Again, it's your elected officials have this surplus, and you can go build parks, for instance, without having to go into debt for them.
Did you ever ask the citizens if they want the money back, or anything like that?
Actually, at one point when we were looking particularly good, I went before the council with a plea that we actually reduce taxes, and it was their decision not to do that, but to let it increase the reserve and to put it into services.
So that money went back into infrastructure.
Yeah.
Then.
Hmm.
And that helped build more parks and
All of that.
redevelopment.
Yeah. And that's the choice that they're there for. That's what they should be making, not getting involved in the day-to-day details of running a city, because they're not experts. They're part-time elected officials. But they should be expressing the will of the people. Do the people, would the people like a tax rebate? Or would they rather have more service? That's the kind of choices they do and should be making.
Sandy Springs, when I checked, has 4 or 5 Fortune 500 companies in this area, which is more than Atlanta in general.
Exactly. Actually, we do.
And more are on the way.
Yes.
Why is that? Why are companies running to come here?
Well, one, it's a good place to live. It is a strong community with nice residences in most cases.
People want to come. It's a beautiful place. It is a beautiful place. Hawaii is a beautiful place too.
Oh, yes.
And there's lots of people would love to live there and work there and move there.
And I'd love for them to invite me to come out
Right,
and
I
tell
would
them
love
about
to
this.
invite you, of course, yeah.
It's a beautiful place.
But businesses are running away,
Yeah.
and they're coming here instead. And
If you tell me that without knowing any more about it, I'm going to say you have too much regulation. Businesses despise too much regulation. They recognize the need for reasonable regulation, but when you put a layer upon a layer of hindrances upon them, you're not going to attract business.
well, how do other cities follow this model? Let's say a city elsewhere wanted to incorporate. How do you do that? How do you make a city?
Well, in the years that followed, I said Sandy Springs was 50 years in the making. The next year, 2 more came into being.
In total, there were 6 cities that incorporated after Sandy Springs, following the same model, and 6 more are on the way. It all started when Oliver came up with a plan for how to create a new city.
So I went home from the meeting and on a pad of paper drew up a plan for how to start a city.
You
Critical path,
drew a
you know,
plan for how to start a
critical
city.
paths, all those sort of things. Sort of a little PERT chart, if you were familiar with that, and brought it in. The committee passed it, and then we didn't get the bill that year. And the next year, I put a new date on the same plan, brought it in, they passed it. We didn't get the bill, but then all of a sudden, there was a change of the political power in the state, and we were told your bill is going to be number 1. And we said, uh-oh, we're kind of like the dog that caught a train. I got it. What I do with it?
Be careful what you wish for.
Yes, everybody kind of looked around and said, "Where's
Yeah.
that plan you that nobody paid any attention to?" And I said, "Well, I've still got it. And can you implement it?" And I said, "Well, I will under two conditions. One, we have no time. We only have months now to start a city of almost 100,000 people. So we can't run it by committee. If you're going to ask me to do it, I've got to have some authority
How
to
many
make
months
some
did you have?
decisions.
How many months?
At that point, we're in the middle of January. We had to have the city December 1st. But the bill didn't even pass finally until April. And the referendum that it called for didn't occur until June. So we didn't know for sure we were going to have a city until June, and we got to have it 1st of December, 4 months, 5 months later.
So you have 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, to really
create
do
a
it.
new city.
But I said, if you want me to do it, give me some authority to move on my own, and give me a title, because I've been trying to talk to other cities, and as this committee person, nobody give me the time of day. But I think if you give me the title of interim city manager, it'll help me. And it really did. It's funny. I started calling mayors and saying, "This is the interim city manager for Sandy Springs," and they'd answer my calls. So it's semantics, but it was important.
Okay, can I hold on for a sec? So
Yeah.
you were just a person.
Just a person
It's not
with
like
with no government background.
you with no background. You didn't actually have any real power.
None.
In any real government
None.
yet. And on December 1st, you had to have a city
fully
put
operational
together.
City. So I sat down right here in this house and wrote a letter to 24 companies, national, international companies that looked like they might be able to do what we needed. And in that, I asked two questions. I gave them a matrix of the 12 major areas of service and said, where have you done this for a city or a county or maybe even a state or military? Tell me where you have done this. And the second question is, would you spend the millions of dollars and the resources to start this city for us without a contract? Because I can't give you one, not until the day the city starts.
So you're going up to companies and asking them,
Yep.
will you help us create a city?
Right.
And we won't.
We can't give you a
We
contract.
can't give you a contract.
It turned out they spent about $5 million in advance without a contract.
Let me try to summarize how to make a city, or how to incorporate a city. First you have to look at your state legal process.
Exactly.
And in this case, you had to pass a referendum that would allow you to begin forming a new city.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And then after that, you had a governor's commission, in your case, right?
Appointed, yes.
Appointed, that you had to work with in
Right.
creating a request for proposal to companies that could help you run the city.
Issuing those proposals. It was helpful to be able to go as the interim city manager to myself as chairman of the governor's commission to get things passed. That helped a little bit, smoothing things out.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then you have to you can start bidding to companies to
Right.
say, will you help us? Will you help us? And how much will it cost?
Right.
And et cetera. So the niggly details of that. And then in your case, on December 1st, what happened?
Well, the new council was sworn in. The reason we did it at 1 minute after midnight was we wanted no gap in the laws from the time the county's statutes ended to when ours began. There was a fear of some people slipping some things in there in that no man's land. So we did that, and they passed their ordinances, statutes, and ordinances were already prepared for them. We had them on laptops in front of them, exactly, and
Everything's ready.
everything. The company has done all this.
Yeah.
Trained them. They actually had training sessions for them on how to use their laptops and all of these. It's all up on a screen so the public, and there was a big public attendance, could see it all.
Was there a big public attendance?
Absolutely, for those first council meetings that were standing room only.
At midnight.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a monumental thing. We've been fighting for 30 years for this.
What happened when the clock struck midnight, or that clock struck 1? What happened?
Well, people said it's the first time they had seen me smile in a year. That's what happened, because I was like a ton just went off my back. But what happened was the mayor called the meeting to order. We had chosen to have an invocation, which was a sometimes controversial thing. That was the next thing that happened. And then we went right into a very business-like agenda. And we were knocking down statutes and ordinances and all of that. Bam, bam, bam. The contract for the company, by the way, didn't get passed for 3 weeks. They would continue to operate without a contract for 3 weeks to just by virtue of the load. We had to get those ordinances and all that in first.
There's a lot of trust involved in all this.
A lot of trust. You know, that's a key word in all of this. It's a partnership. I call it a public-private partnership, and the key word in all of that may be partnership, because the company brought tremendous things to the table, and the city had to do a lot of trusting too. The company had to trust they were going to get a contract. We had to trust they were going to live up to their promises.
So the company needed you, and you needed the company.
Yep.
So more than trust, there's some self-interest in there too.
Symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, symbiotic. Right, right. Interesting.
Yeah.
And after that, you had a new town.
We had a town immediately. Yeah.
Wow. Did you see immediate changes?
We saw. Yeah, we did a lot of things. One of the things we haven't talked about was the fact that we didn't provide police and fire. We had totally under-policed. We had best we could tell, about 12 people assigned to our city. We immediately began to work to increase the size of that and get our own force.
12 policemen for a city of 100,000 plus.
At that time, between 90 and 100, yeah.
Okay. And how many did you need?
We originally created a force of about 85. And we were able to finance that out of the savings from the private partnership.
Did people lose their jobs in the changeover from to incorporation?
No, because there was nothing to lose. There was no city employment. Now the county, we took away a lot of services from them, and they should have cut their force. A year later, they still hadn't cut their force. Another example of the bureaucratic miasma you get into.
Less work to do.
Less work, same force.
Same force.
Yeah. So that's an example of the problems we have with bureaucratic government. It's almost impossible to get rid of people.
So, but going back, incorporating a city isn't impossible though. It can be done.
It can be done, and it varies from, as I said, from state to state. But it certainly can be done, but it's hard work and a lot of work.
And if people want to know more about how to do this, and maybe in their state or just studying your work, where can they find that?
Well, I would strongly recommend reading my book, which was written not as a novel, but as a how to do it
can I
book. Sure, that's the softback version. It's a hardback version.
The book is called Creating the New City of Sandy Springs.
And it has a subtitle, which is, I think, pretty good, The 21st Century Paradigm Private Industry. So I'm a strong advocate of the public-private partnership model.
And inside the book, the first half is how you did it, the steps that you took. The second half is what?
It's the charter, a sample charter, the RFPs that we used, the requests for proposals that we sent out to the companies, and then the contract that resulted from that. And also there is the original legislation. Now that's the one that's probably least applicable to other states. The others, I would say, is pretty generally applicable to others.
But you've got the bill, you've got the request for proposals.
You've got the bill, the charter, the RFPs, the contract itself.
So this is the city right here.
Yeah.
In a sense, that's fairly interesting.
I'm not very political often because I tell elected officials that, you owe it to your citizens. You owe it to them to at least consider an alternative that is now as proven as this is.
Not just proven in Sandy Springs, but
proven in other cities.
In other cities that have followed this model.
Right. And it's almost criminal to me that elected officials are not looking into it. Look at all the problems we have with pensions and the unfunded liabilities for them. I mean, Detroit is the headline of them all, but there's so many governments out there. Again, I call rolling bankruptcies. They're just pushing it off in the future. They're going to happen, and so it's astounding that they're not looking for radically different ideas as to how this might be done in a more efficient and responsive manner.
Great. Well, thanks for inspiring us, and hopefully we can get more cities and counties to look into this. And thanks for joining us today, Oliver Porter.
Thank you.